All right, Andrew, good to see you, my man.
Morning.
All right, guys, this is our book club. So welcome to another The Outlier Project book club. Before we get started, very quick housekeeping. Our book for this month is Christine Lilly's book, Powerhouse. She's going to be joining us on October 4th. Christine Lilly is a soccer Hall of Famer, two-time World Cup champ, two-time Olympic gold medalist. If you want a signed copy of her book, Kathy will put it in the chat, and Christine will send you a signed copy of her book. We're following that up with my friend Iman Obu. She's amazing. Started her career in research science, became Miss New York, then started a company called Sway Media, and wrote this book that just came out and was very quickly a bestseller. Iman is joining us on November 1st. And then our last book for the year is Mark Champagne's book, Personal Socrates. This is a very cool book, guys. And if you don't listen to his podcast, you've got to check it out. It's unbelievable. So Mark is going to join us December 6th. So if you want to get ahead, those are some books to check out. On Monday, and you heard it right, Monday. So we always do things on Tuesdays, but we changed to a Monday. This upcoming Monday, we have Colin O'Brady, who is an absolute beast and a legend. So Colin wrote a New York Times bestseller called The Impossible First. It's really a memoir, and it takes you from the time that he graduated from Yale and decided to roam around the world, got severely burned. They said he would never walk right again, and now he's set 10 world records, including the first person to ever solo unsupported and unaided across Antarctica. So join us. He just wrote another book called The 12-Hour Walk, which is super cool, very different. He's partners with Jesse Itzler, really good friend. So he's joining us September 12th. September 20th, we have Chris Schembra, who wrote the bestseller Gratitude and Pasta. Super interesting guy. And then we follow that up with a true legend, 80, I believe, 6-year-old Joe Foster, who is the founder of Reebok. So under Joe Foster's leadership, and this is hard to remember today with Nike being so prominent, but Reebok at one point had surpassed Nike and was just kicking tail. And that was under Joe's leadership. So we're really excited to bring Joe on, and that's October 11th. So for those of you who maybe haven't joined before, the format is 30 minutes of Jason and I talking. I've got a bunch of questions for him, and then 30 minutes of open Q&A. So if you've got a question, all you have to do is drop it in the chat. Just say, I've got a question. You don't have to put your question in there, and I'll tee you up and you can ask your question directly to Jason. So Jason is actually now our most popular guest ever. You've been on, I think, officially 3 or 4 times. So you're our most popular guest ever. He's on the board. He is a great friend and just somebody I admire tremendously. So let me give you a little bit of background. Jason's a West Point grad. He played football at Army. He's a decorated Green Beret. He wrote this book that we're going to be talking about today, Deliberate Discomfort, which is probably a book that I have gifted or recommended more than almost any other book out there. It is absolutely phenomenal. So we're going to talk a lot about that today. He's also the founder of Mission 60, and he's the founder and chairman of Warrior Rising, which we're going to talk about as well, because it is just an absolutely phenomenal organization. And what Jason is doing for veteran entrepreneurs. I've had the pleasure of seeing it up close and personal. It's mind-blowing. I've been involved with a lot of nonprofits, and Warrior Rising is the best run nonprofit I've ever seen in my life. So Kathy, why don't you get us started? Let's get going. JVC, I know you're ready.
I'm ready. Well, let me say this. You got the sound working this week. That was hype. That was amazing. Good job, man. That was really great. And thank you for all the wonderful things you said about me. It means a lot, truly, from you. Thank you for all that. Super excited to be here. Super excited to be here with this tribe, to be a member of this tribe. One bit of admin for anybody in the San Antonio, Austin area. I'm going to be in San Antonio for the Warrior Rising Business Shower this Friday and Saturday. So I'm leaving on Thursday. We'll be there Friday and Saturday. It's going to be awesome. We're helping 15 veterans start their own businesses in San Antonio. Grunt Style is going to sponsor it. And Saturday night, we're going to be at the Tobin Theater for our gala and fundraising dinner. Rob O'Neill is going to be there. Tim Kennedy is going to be there. Nate Boyer is going to be there. Nick Palmisano is going to be there. So if you're in the area and you want to be involved in some capacity, just hit me up in the chat and let me know, and we'll get it going.
Love it. And I love that Grunt Style is supporting you guys. Tim Jensen?
Yeah, Tim is the guy who's doing it. Yeah.
Tim's the man. He's a great dude. I have so many questions for you. I don't even know where to start. But one thing that I think might be potentially swirling in people's heads, we actually do have somebody else that was in Special Forces on this call. But, when you look at the book, Deliberate Discomfort, it says how U.S. Special Operations Forces overcome fear and dare to win by getting comfortable being uncomfortable.
It's a lot, I know.
And I love that. But I wonder if anyone sits back and goes, okay, I have a hard time relating to what the military actually does and what Navy SEALs, Green Berets, Pararescue, Army Rangers, I can't relate to that. So talk about how really all the content in the book, it's through the lens of Special Forces, but I think it is for the common man and woman out there. Talk a little bit about that for us, if you will.
Oh, 100%. So great question. This is how I'm going to answer it, to kind of take you back to why I wrote Deliberate Discomfort. So I got my MBA at Brigham Young University. And while I was there, they gave me an opportunity to start a business, and I had an idea to start Mission 60, this leadership development firm. And one of my favorite professors, this guy was just a rock star. His resume was through the roof, and I really respected him. And I went to him and I told him, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. Do you have any advice for me? And he's like, let me get this straight. You're going to start a leadership consulting business. And his response was so disappointing and condescending that I was uncomfortable, right? And I was like, I get the feeling that you don't think too highly of this idea, And he's like, we can get you a high-paying job anywhere. We can get you a Goldman Sachs. We can get you a job wherever. Why do you want to start leadership of all things? I mean, leadership, come on. So obviously he didn't think too highly of leadership or the intangibles or what that means to a business and to a team, right? And, he said, well, let me ask you this, Jason, what makes you the authority on leadership? And I said, well, very matter of factly and bold. I was like, listen, I went to West Point. I'm a special forces guy. I've been on hundreds of combat missions to kill or capture high value targets. I've been deployed many times over the course of my life, my young life, 35 years old at the time, and he's like, so what? Because I don't see how that makes you interesting or knowledgeable about business leadership, and I swallowed my pride for a minute because he sort of had a point, and I think this is what a lot of special forces guys don't consider, when they get into the civilian world. They think everybody wants to have what we have. Everybody wants to know what we have. We're the best, right? That isn't always the case, right? And a lot of businesses don't respect the military. They don't think that there's anything that they can bring to the table or add, And I realized what I needed to do, one, was get that experience, so start working with business clients, start being around those type of people, start immersing myself in that sort of thing. And then my professor also said, Jason, you need to have some material. You're not going to succeed if you don't have something. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, you have to write a book. If you're going to start any business like this, you have to have some credibility. You have to have a book first. This is how it's done. You got to write a book. And so I thought to myself, okay, well, if I'm going to write a book, like, what am I going to write about? Because you look at every Navy SEAL that has ever attended BUD/S, they get out and eventually write a book about it, right? And I'm just joking about it because I love my Navy SEAL brethren. But, I'm a Green Beret. There are no Green Beret writers out there. We're the quiet professionals. We don't put ourselves out there. We don't talk about our missions. We don't do any of that stuff. I don't want to bring any attention to myself. And my professor was like, you shouldn't look at it like that way. If you have something to say, you should say it. Don't be afraid to say it. When he said afraid, that's kind of when it hit me. I was like, man, afraid. I guess in a way I am afraid to write a book. We're called, the Green Berets, the quiet professionals, but we're not silent professionals. We can't be a subject matter expert or an authority or anything like that if no one knows about me. And so at the time I said, thank you, I appreciate it. I'll take your advice into consideration. And I thought about it a lot. And immediately when I left his office, the thought in my mind was, I don't want to do this. I don't want to put myself out there. I don't want to write a book, But then immediately after that, the response in my mind was, I have to, And I think we've all been there in our lives. Like we don't want to do something, but we have to do it. And that's what deliberate discomfort is all about. It's about taking that first step. It's about making a choice. Like I'm going to do hard things. Because when you first start to think about making that choice to do something hard, the cognitive dissonance starts going in your mind. You start to say, well, if I put myself out there, if I market myself, if I write a book, then I'm going to come across as arrogant and pretentious and self-promoting, and that's bad. So I'm not going to write a book because of that, right? But if we accept that we're likely wrong about these assumptions, like I was, we can change our mindset and say, all right, I can market myself. I can be authentic. I can be true to myself. Because once you do that, you eliminate the procrastination. And something that's interesting about the procrastination is we don't necessarily push back on the action. We push back on the emotion attached to the action. For example, my friend, Dr. Sarah Spradlin, she hates folding laundry. Is folding laundry difficult? It's easy. It's mindless, right? But she doesn't like feeling that she's wasting time, that she's losing out on opportunities by spending the time folding that laundry. And for me, I don't like social media. I don't like posting. I don't like that stuff. And it's easy. You come up with an interesting comment or thought or whatever. You get an interesting picture and you post it online. It's easy. But my reluctance is because how I feel when I post something online. And it wasn't necessarily about the action, right? It was about faux pas, right? And that's something that we've talked about before. It's fear of putting yourself out there, or fear of other people's opinions, or fear of posting online, right? So FOMO, as many of us know, is that fear of missing out, social anxiety that we think somebody's having more fun than we are. I'm missing out. But faux pas is an anxiety that I want to say something or do something, but the possible negative consequences are so overwhelming that I don't do it. And so when it all came down to, what it all comes down to is fear, right? And fear is only fear of the unknown. And once I know something, I no longer fear it. So once I realized, that's all it was, I decided to take that leap of faith and do it. And so that's sort of the catalyst behind writing Deliberate Discomfort, about facing your fear, about being a better human, about being a better leader.
It's so interesting because I think when people hear deliberate discomfort, and it's cool that you're talking about writing a book and posting. I think most people think deliberate discomfort is taking cold showers, waking up at 4 a.m., or doing your deliberate discomfort challenge or something like that. But for you, deliberate discomfort is posting or writing a book, putting yourself out there. So it's a different definition for everybody. So when you talk about deliberate discomfort, you're just not talking about, hey, jump in a cold shower, do a cold plunge, do this, do that. You're talking about way more than that.
Scott, it's subjective. Discomfort is 100% entirely subjective. I'll give you some examples. I think you maybe heard me talk about this before. So you jump in a cold shower. Okay, great. Well, I lived in Russia for 2 years. I served a mission there. In the springtime, they turn off all the hot water. So you have to take a cold shower from May until October. You don't have a choice. You get used to it pretty quick. And so when people tell me, Jason, you got to take a cold shower to embrace discomfort, I'm like, that's easy for me. That's not hard for me. Right. That's not uncomfortable. That's not a level of discomfort. For me, subjective. For other people, they dread it. You have to wake up in the morning, take a cold shower. It's the last thing in the world they want to do. It's the hardest thing they've done all day long. For me, not the case. I'll give you another example from Admiral McCraven. He's like, make your bed. First thing in the morning, make your bed. For a lot of people, that's very difficult. You're tired. Last thing you want to do is make your bed. Who cares if you make your bed or not? Right? But it sets a precedent. So you have to do something difficult in the morning to set yourself up for success later in the day. Also, it's subjective. For me, they forced us to make our beds every morning at West Point. Right? We had to have the hospital corners, like you're supposed to be able to bounce a quarter off your sheets. You know what I mean? Oftentimes you're so tired that you don't even sleep on your bed. You sleep under your bed because you don't want to make your bed in the morning, right? If you're that tired at West Point, right? And it's subjective. So for me, you're like, Jason, make your bed first thing in the morning. It's like, okay, it's not hard. It's a habit for me. Plus, it's hard to make your bed first thing in the morning when your wife is still sleeping in it. You know what I mean? So that's another thing, right? Let's say working out for some people, very, very difficult. For others, you get up and you do it. It's a habit. My buddy, the Iron Cowboy, right? He is a rock star, lives down the street from me. He became famous because he completed 50 Ironman races in 50 consecutive days in 50 states, right? So he'd wake up in the morning, 2.4 mile swim, 112 mile bike ride, 26.2 mile run every single day for 50 days. A few years later, as a matter of fact, last year, he's like, I need to do something new. So he did 100 Ironman races in 100 consecutive days. So he did that every morning for 100 straight days. And I was able to go with him on a few of those. And it was exhausting. And so I've done a half Ironman before, and that was ridiculously hard for me. The bike was really tough. And I always wanted to do one Ironman. And I thought to myself, man, that's pretty badass if you can do an Ironman. If you can say you're an Ironman, that's pretty awesome. But then I look at Iron Cowboy, James, I'm like, this dude, come on, man, this dude 100 in a row. Like, how cool is it for me to do one? But that's hard for me. That's my discomfort, right? It's not his discomfort. If you were asking him to bench press 400 pounds, he couldn't do it. I could, right? So that's another level of discomfort. So that's what it comes down to. And for me, I said this many times. I think I said this on our last call. My discomfort, one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life is go to West Point. Very difficult for me. 4 years, I was very young. 18 years old. Maturity level wasn't quite there. I didn't have the life experience at the time. And so every day was difficult for me. But I got through it. I didn't quit, put one foot in front of the other, I kept moving forward. I had that relentless resolve. Looking back on that experience, I'm like, man, if I could do that, I can do anything. And I've gone through experiences in training, combat, life experiences where I say to myself, at least I'm not at West Point, because that was hard for me. But then we go to alumni dinners, every year. And some of the old timers get up and they're like, I wish I could go back to West Point. That was the best 4 years of my life. And I was like, well, that was not my best 4 years, man. And God bless you. That was not his discomfort, but it was mine. And so I always feel like I'm super long-winded with these answers, man. So just stop.
No, I love the way you answered these questions. So is there a reason for putting yourself through deliberate discomfort outside of building resiliency so that the next adversity that comes your way is less daunting? So I always think of it as you do it just like you go to the gym to get stronger. You put yourself in deliberately uncomfortable positions to build your resiliency. Do you see it that way or do you see it differently?
No, 100%. Like you're proving to yourself that you're strong every single time you do it. You're building mental, physical, spiritual, social, emotional, and professional toughness points, right? You're becoming stronger, you're becoming calloused, you're becoming experienced. Yep. And like I said, what it comes down to is facing fear, facing things you don't want to do. And fear is really just fear of the unknown. That's all it is. When you know something, you no longer fear it. So if you put yourself out there continuously, you're going to see, that it's not as bad as you thought it was. As a matter of fact, when it's all said and done, you're going to look back at your experience and you're like, you know what? It wasn't that bad. It could have been really bad in the moment, but looking back on it, hindsight is always 20/20. Yeah, it wasn't that bad. I can do more. And you want to push yourself even further and faster, because everybody wants to know what your limits are, where your boundaries are. Hey, you know what? I did this. I wonder if I can do that. Maybe I'll just do a little bit more, put a little bit more effort into it and go in that direction.
Yeah, I think it helps you, correct me if I'm wrong, it helps you trust yourself.
Yeah, it's a great way of looking at it. You're learning to trust yourself.
It was interesting. I was having this conversation with my wife, Meg. Jesse Itzler invited us to go to Maine on Thursday to do Hell on the Hill in Maine. Nice. And because we didn't sign up and he just invited us kind of at the last minute, I mean, she was like, yeah, I'm in. As we get closer, she's like, holy crap, like I'm not ready for this they call it the world's hilliest half marathon. And what I told her was it's 5 hours, which is a long time, but we've done 29:29, which is 36 hours. And she's done, Joe DeSena, who founded Spartan, invited us to his farm in Vermont, and we did 8 hours straight up and down. He has a mountain. I mean, who has a mountain in their backyard? He has a mountain called Mount Sparta. So it's a mile up, mile down. We did that for 8 hours straight. So I think once she thought back, I could see her confidence increase and go, oh yeah, I've done that before. So does it just need to become like muscle memory or I don't know, maybe mind memory? So that you have that confidence going into tough things.
You're training yourself to trust yourself, right? And your body always remembers. And when I say your body, I'm saying mentally, physically, spiritually, socially, emotionally, it remembers. And so if you've been in really good shape in your life and for whatever reason, you just kind of get lazy and you get out of shape, it's a lot easier for you to get back in shape because your body remembers. Right? If you've never been in shape and you're trying to get in shape for the first time, your body is fighting it, man. Because it's like, this is weird. This is unusual. I don't like it. Right. And kind of the same thing when you do these hard things, remind yourself, you know what? I did an Ironman 3 years ago. I know I haven't trained for it. I've proven to myself that I can do this. It's going to get really hard. And I know how I'm going to react when it does get really hard. Because it's not an unknown to you. You know it. You've done it. Right. You've experienced it. And if you haven't experienced it personally, look to your friends, look to people that you hang around with. To show me your friends, show me your future mindset. That's why we read books. That's why we have this community, this tribe. You surround yourself with people who have done it, and you get to know them. And you're like, well, they wrote a book, I can write a book. They ran an Ironman, I can run an Ironman. They did this, they made $1 million, I can make $1 million. They traveled all over the world, I can do that too. So if you can't do it yourself, look to others and try to learn from their experiences.
Is it as important? So you're one of those rare people. You played collegiate football. So you played football at a very high level. You're in the military and special forces, and you've been in corporate America. So you've kind of seen how this can apply to each domain. Is it as important for each, or is there a difference?
I'm not sure I quite follow you there. Say it a different way.
So in the military, obviously being able to overcome adversity, being resilient is very important. In sports, it's very important. In corporate, maybe we don't think it's as important. Is it equally important in your mind in all three of those domains?
Yes, I think I understand. So you have to embrace.
Sometimes I don't even understand what the hell I'm asking.
I feel like this. You got to embrace that deliver discomfort mindset in order to succeed in life. Like if you're going to the gym, right? You can't just do the same workout every single day and use the same weights. You're not going to grow. You're going to grow at first, and then you're going to reach a plateau and you're not going to grow. You have to continue adding weight, doing different exercises and things like that. At West Point, when I played football, people were always saying things like, be the hardest worker in the room. Okay, awesome. Well, I was always good physically. And at a young age, I learned about the conditioning drills. And so I was a guy that was always really good at conditioning. Like when we had the sprints or the laps around, like I was always the first guy back, right? And I always prided myself in that. But later in life, I thought to myself, was I the hardest worker in the room? I was just doing things that I liked. I was just doing things that I was good at. You know what I mean? I wasn't really paying attention to things I wasn't good at, right? Doing like the stretching. Who cares about stretching? Doesn't matter. I'm the worst stretcher ever, right? I should have been paying more attention to things like that. And in business, it's the same thing, right? Do you want to grow? Do you want to create something special? Or are you good with, hey, I made $600,000 last year. I made $4 million. I'm good. I don't want to do any more. Or do you want to push yourself a little bit further?
So you think it's important and from a business perspective as well, that it's not only helpful, obviously, in the military and in sports, but in business?
In life, not in business and in life, personal and professional. It's a mindset. It's a way of thinking that's going to help you be better at whatever it is you're trying to be better at.
What's your advice? So we all, by default, I think, we crave certainty, predictability, we crave comfort. So it's totally counterintuitive to try to do things that are putting you in an opposite state. What's something that you can do to kind of get that switch in your brain flipped over so that you want to do something that is so counterintuitive to how we're wired?
That's a good question. I would say this: experience what you think you want. So if you want comfort, if you want ease, if you want all that, put yourself in that position. Discover for yourself if you're truly happy. I've been to many resorts and beaches and things like that. And for me, being there for a week or two, hanging out, tanning, swimming, it's fun until it's not. And then you're like, I'm kind of bored. I need to do something else. I need to push myself. I need to have some sort of achievement. And we as humans are just wired to be that way. Like when we say we want this comfort, we want all this stuff, we really don't. what we want is we want to progress. We want to be better than we were the day before. And we oftentimes don't think that way. We just think of the end state. We don't think of the journey. And I know there's a lot of material out there right now about folks saying, listen, how can I be successful and be rich and have everything I want in the fastest possible way? Well, that's the problem, is when you add that fastest possible way, right? That's the opposite of what I'm trying to say. Is the end state isn't really what matters. It's the journey that matters. It's the journey where you transform yourself, where you learn things, where you become better. It doesn't matter how long it takes. It's subjective. How long it takes is how long it takes for you, right? And people are always concerned and focused on the end state. And as they get there, sometimes they're like a bulldozer and they just bulldoze everybody out of the way in order to achieve that goal. And once they get that goal, they look back at the carnage, at the wreckage that they left, and there's relationships destroyed, marriages destroyed, relationships with their kids, with their friends, bridges that were burned. And it's kind of like, was it all worth it for you to get there as fast as you did? Or would it have been better for you to become stronger and smarter on your journey, as you would have eventually achieved that goal anyway?
Love it. Well, I could ask you a lot more inane questions, but I'm gonna turn it over to our community here. So we're gonna go to Florida first. Doug, you are up with JVC.
Thank you so much, Scott and Kathy and Jason. Thank you so much for your service and all that you do to give back.
Thanks, Doug. Appreciate you, bud.
Incredible community. So my question, I was lucky enough, since Scott announced you as the most popular featured person in our group, I was lucky enough to win your book.
Oh, on the last call, yeah?
Or I think on the last call,
yeah.
which is whenever that was.
Yeah.
In full candor, I went back into it to refresh my memory and recollection on some things that I read shortly after I got the book. And I really stopped again at chapter 1, The Commander, and the story that you told about your first sit down with Major Brian, and is it Pettit?
You nailed it, Pettit.
Oh, yep. Thank God. I was even scared of mispronouncing it.
Oh, no,
I'm not even kidding.
Scared.
I was literally like, my palms were sweating. And he asked you an incredibly profound question around thinking that I had sat with for a couple of days now. And I'm wondering if you could share with the group, sort of set that scene and share the question with us, and how that maybe has served as your North Star as you're navigating through life, or has with others that you work with. I can elaborate if need be on the question that I'm.
No, I'm pretty sure I know the question you're asking me. It's what do you think about when you don't have to think? And I'll tell you who you are. Yeah, right. Okay. So for those of you that haven't read the book, and as a matter of fact, if you haven't read the book, identify yourself. Give me a thumbs up in the or something, because I
don't be shy.
Don't be shy. I want to see something. Well, I'm getting that information. Scott can relay it to me. I'll tell you the story. So, Major Pettit sits me down in his office when I first arrived into my unit. Just earned my Green Beret, and as is often the case when you're a Green Beret, when you arrive to your unit, you get assigned a team, and you're going to command a team. So I'm going to be the team leader. I'm going to be the detachment commander of Operational Detachment Alpha, so an A team, right? And Major Pettit welcomes me into the company, into the unit. Happy to have you here. We're going to deploy soon. In order for you to not only survive, but thrive, there are some things I need you to do. And so he asked me to do a few things, and he talks to me about his leadership philosophy and all this stuff. And he asks me some questions. And one of the questions he asked me, I didn't quite understand, and he says, what do you think about when you don't have to think? I never really heard that question before, right? And I had a hard time answering it on the spot, you know. And he said, well, let me give you an example. When I was young, I there was a young man who studied to be a physicist, and he was having a hard time understanding the concepts and figuring out the problems. And his father was a physicist, a really successful physicist. And so he went to his dad. He said, I don't really understand this. Can you explain it to me? And the father's like, son, we've been over this many, many times. You're just not getting it. And the father asked the son, what do you think about when you don't have to think? And in the sense of, what do you mean? He's like, well, when you're in the shower, and you don't have to think about anything. When you're mowing the lawn and you don't have to think about things. When you're doing sort of folding the laundry, doing mundane tasks, when you don't have to think, isn't physics what you're thinking about? And the son said, no, it's not. And the dad said, well, then you shouldn't be a physicist. And when Major Pettit relayed that story to me, he was given that question. And he honestly answered to himself that he wanted to serve other people. He wanted to be a military officer. And that's why he chose the career that he did. And so he was following that dream. That's what he thought about when he didn't have to think. And he was asking me the same question. And so essentially I asked the readers that same question. Like, what do you think about when you don't have to think? If you can answer me that question, I'll tell you who you are. Right. And there's so many of us in life where we just sort of, by circumstance or happenstance, we just landed in the position that we're in. We're just doing something, and you kind of look back on the things that happened in your life to get you where you are, sort of out of your control. You didn't decide that. It sort of just happened to you. And so if you can figure out what it is that you want, who you are, what you think about when you don't have to think, you'll find your happiness.
Thank you so much. That was beautiful.
That's powerful. That is a great question for all of us to ask ourselves. Love it. Tommy in Florida, you're up.
I'm in California, but.
Sorry, California. We have so many people in Florida.
I know.
It's my default.
Florida man, California man.
Jason, thank you for being on. Appreciate your service and commitment to helping others.
You're kind.
In my corporate career, I've hired and sought out a lot of transitioning military folks because I just found them to be excellent employees. And I don't understand the stigma with trying to hire folks into corporate America that have military backgrounds. What do you think it is that people just don't understand about transitioning military people and the skill set that they bring to the business world?
Great question. So again, fear of the unknown. People that don't hire military veterans are people that don't know military veterans. They're not friends with them. And so they think worst case scenario because their fears take over and they're like, oh man, I'm going to get a guy in here who's going to be like John Rambo. He's probably going to walk in here with his sleeves cut off. This is a guy that has tattoos everywhere. He's just going to be talking to me about killing people and about military operations. Man, like, I don't want that type of person here. I don't want to have those conversations. I don't want this person to ruin the chemistry in the building. And then when they meet military guys, like, oh, you're nothing like what I expected. Oh, wow, you have interesting things to say. Oh, wow, you're well read. Oh, hey, listen, this guy takes command when there's a situation, right? He's pretty good at leadership. Like, he's no nonsense guy, but there are times when the military culture and background doesn't fit well with the business world. Like Flo Groberg, good buddy of mine, Medal of Honor recipient, he got hired by Boeing and he was the chief of staff, right, to Boeing. And one of the meetings he walked in, conference room, slide deck, the whole thing. He sat down, pulled out an empty Mountain Dew bottle and started, snapping some skull, right? And stuck some dip in his mouth and just started spitting, right? And people in the room were just like, not only shocked, but appalled, and they didn't say anything. Like, this is a Medal of Honor guy. Like, what should we do? And he's just like oblivious to what's going on. Because if you ever been in any type of infantry unit or Rangers or Green Berets, like, that's pretty common. Like, we're going on a mission to capture Osama bin Laden. Like 5 guys in the room are dipping. You know what I mean? It's just how it happens. And after the meeting, Flo was brought to the side and was like, Flo, don't you ever do that again. Like, we do not do that here. And here's why. And Flo was like, oh man, like I didn't even think about it. Right. So there are little things like that you have to correct from time to time. And it isn't because guys are being assholes or anything like that. It's because they're just oblivious or they just don't know the proper culture, but they pick it up really quickly. And so I agree with you. There's a stigma with a lot of organizations. And then a lot of organizations think they're doing a favor, or it's charity that they're hiring military veterans. These poor military veterans, will bring them in and give them a job, and a lot of times they think the only thing we're good at is either security, or cleaning up stuff, right? So we have to break that, and I think we are breaking that slowly but surely.
Thank you. I hope so. Well-read, well-traveled, takes command, shows up for work, always like take on the next item, right? I just think that's so hard to find in traits today as well. So I hope we do get past some of that. Thank you.
Good question. Thanks.
Yeah, hopefully at the end, we can talk a little bit about what you're doing at Warrior Rising, because I think it's absolutely spectacular.
Hell yeah.
John Ruggiero, whose
My guy,
daughter,
John.
Sammy, crushing it at West Point. She's loving it. I don't know what's wrong with Jason.
She's
She seems
crushing
she's
it.
loving it.
She's crushing it. She's loving it. She's a Ranger. I'm sorry, not Ranger. Air Assault honor, a distinguished honor graduate at Air Assault. She's going to be the first captain. She's like crushing it in every sense, and I'm proud of her, man.
And she loves it. Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I always send her your text too. The ones that she always loves that. She's just like, she gets excited when she sees that. So no, that was cool. Yeah. Buddy, like I could spout good things about your book and everything like that and your challenge and everything. But the question I have for you is, what's next for Jason? You've done the Deliberate Discomfort Challenge, which I've done twice, which has been amazing. You do the book was great. You do a lot of corporate support and things like that. What's the next hurdle for you? What's the next thing we can see from your group?
I love it. Well, listen, I'm going to outsource that question to the group. But before I do, here's what's next for me. Being a good husband, being a good father, right? Raising my kids. My kids are now at this age where they're going to get into sports, and my dad was at every sport I ever played, not only watching the game, but he was like a coach on the team. Right. So show me your friend. I'll show you your future. So my dad kind of showed me the way, and I want to live up to my dad's legacy and do that for my kids. So I want to be like, maybe not the head coach, but at least an assistant coach for all the sports. Right. So that's kind of what I want to do there. For Mission 60, I'm writing book number 2. So Deliberate Discomfort is a trilogy, right? And the first one is about starting, like making that choice. That's what Deliberate Discomfort is all about. Book number 2 is going to be about doing. It's about how to keep moving forward when you want to quit, right? So it's going to be about my experiences in combat. It's my second deployment in particular. And then book 3 later down the road, what happens after, once you get back from combat, you've done all these things, now what sort of thing, and how do you deal with all this stuff, right? Deliberate Discomfort Challenge, the next one is going to be on January 2nd, so I'm doing that again. And I'm looking for ideas for Mission 60. What do people want, right? So I'm writing the book. We're going to do the challenge again. I've tried many things, many verticals, and they've all been profitable, but they haven't been skyrocketing, profitable. So I'm looking for something there. Warrior Rising, we have the San Antonio Business Shower this Saturday. Following that, we're going to go to Salt Lake City on Veterans Day, November 11th for our business shower. That should be a great one. Marcus Trell is going to be there as our keynote. Then we're going to the Army Navy game in Philadelphia. We have a big tailgate.
Yep.
Tailgate, Mission Barbecue. You're going to see the Warrior Rising Mission 60 flags, as well as the American flag flying high. Come, it's
Yep, I'll be there.
it's an Army football thing, but we don't exclude Navy guys. It's okay. We'll have a good time. Scott, hopefully he can come too. Anybody can come. It's free, right? And then we'll go to the game. Next year is sort of a beautiful mystery, as Aaron Rodgers would say. So I'm working with a team right now to tackle security for schools, for children. So working to kind of solve that problem. And that's what I'm working on right now.
Great. It's awesome. Well, the challenge is great. The challenge changed my life, like I told you. I after having some surgery, and one of those guys that was always in shape and then got out of shape, and then that got me back into shape. But the best thing is the mental shape. I do it every day. The challenge never really left. Like my wife says, we went to a wedding 2 weekends ago. She's like, all right, their wedding's at 12. I know you need to get a workout in. So make sure you get it in before this time, before we leave. And don't forget your book, because she knows I'll read for an hour every day in the morning. So it's like, she's like on the deliberate discomfort challenge with me. So
hell yeah.
But
that's exactly what I wanted to happen. Exactly.
Yep. Oh, it's
Reading
awesome.
books, working out, you got mindfulness, you reach out to friends and past friends.
Yep.
It's awesome stuff.
Yep. 31 books this year so far already.
Good for you. Good for you.
Thanks, buddy.
Jason,
Appreciate it.
I
Awesome.
cannot even imagine your kids athletically. I think Lizzie's a former Nike athlete. So I think they've got a pretty good gene pool. That could be a lot of fun.
She just finished sixth. I thought you told Jason. I was going to say my crazy daughter just finished sixth at another triathlon, and Army won up at Lake George triathlon. They beat Cornell and Northeastern and Penn State and a whole bunch of other ones. They swept.
Yeah.
They swept
Love
the
it.
top six in each category.
Nice. Well, that's phenomenal. Appreciate it, Scott. My wife is far more athletically inclined than I am of the two of us. I've got the determination and the heart, and the being blunt and bold. My wife was pretty shy, but she was national champion, North American champion. She was placed in the worlds. She would have gone to the Olympics, but she kind of lost her desire to do it. So we'll see. It's kind of funny because my daughter's in gymnastics. She's 5, so gymnastics when you're 5, right? But she can do like a double backflip already, which I've never been able to do in my life, and that's pretty cool. And I'm like, oh man, this is awesome. Like, she's going to be great. My wife's like, oh, she's never going to make the Olympics. She's just too tall. And I'm just like, that's just a different mindset. You know what I mean? I'm like hoping she's going to have fun and be successful. Maybe she'll get a scholarship. My wife is like, it's not Olympic quality yet. It's just like, it's just different, man. She's on a different level, my man.
I love it. I love it. Ted in Connecticut, you're up.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Jason, Scott, Kathy, and crew.
What's up?
Jason, just want to say thanks again, Scott. This is the coolest thing, right? Have a person like Jason Van Camp, just even through Zoom and reading his book, coming into your life. Just like John said, actually today we're starting in the Cosgrove household, kind of a variation. I think I told you I kind of tried to do a variation of the deliberate discomfort. And then my son had done something with some college friends called 75 Hard.
Yeah.
So he started talking about it this weekend, and I was like, oh my gosh, I got to get back into my deliberate discomfort mode. So we're doing that. So thanks for that inspiration. If I could, so much to say, but as we were talking, I kind of wanted to see, not to totally put you on the spot, but and I might get emotional talking about this. Thursday night, we open up our home. I'm an athletic director. We have an away football game, and we open up our season. Last year, our season got cut short. Only got through 5 games. It was a program that has a proud history, and a lot of things over the years. This is my second year here trying to rebuild, and we got through half the season due to injuries. Had a small team and just wasn't safe anymore and couldn't do it. We've been busting our butt. We hired a new coach who's doing unbelievable things, and we've got close to 50 boys now that are out there, been busting their butt since winter, spring, and summer lifting, and we're getting ready to go. One of the things in terms of that I love about these kids is that when things go wrong, they don't typically blame others. They just get frustrated. They get frustrated with themselves, but they're not in the blame game at all. We talk about process. We're not looking at outcomes in terms of scoreboard. We're not comparing ourselves to others. We're like, how do we get better every day? If I was able to get you in our locker room for 5 minutes before kickoff, I'm just wondering if there's something that you could say, just kind of knowing that, especially you being a football player too, like, you know, you always prepare for the apocalypse. The wheels are going to fall off at some point, right? You're always going to face some adversity. Is there anything that you'd be able to tell a group of 15 to 18-year-old boys to help them recenter and recalibrate? I mean, I do it, but it's in a more patient mode. But in terms of being able to accelerate that in a competitive environment, I'm just curious if there's any ideas or nuggets you might be able to share.
What would you say to this group before kickoff, right? That's what you're
Right.
looking for?
Yes. Yep.
You know, it's a great question. It all depends on the group. Like, what do they need to hear? Like, what are they going through right now? What are the challenges that they're facing right now? What's going on in their lives, in their community? You know, because what would work for one person might not work for somebody else. You know, it's like that platinum rule. You know, the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Do unto others as they would want you to do unto them. So we got to go a step further and ask them the question, like, what do you guys want? What do you guys need? And we can certainly, you know, craft something powerful, inspirational, motivational that would resonate with them. You know, sometimes guys don't need to hear anything and they're ready to go, right? I don't need to hear the pregame speech because I'm locked in, man. Like in the special forces before a mission, like and I'm good at that stuff. I'm pretty damn good at like the inspirational shit. I never gave one inspirational speech before my guys before a mission to my guys before a mission. They didn't need to hear it. They were locked in, man. I knew they were going to crush it. They knew what they needed to do. I knew that they had their own specific individual ways of getting ready for that moment, for that mission, right? And I wasn't going to mess that up for those guys. But sometimes, oftentimes words are powerful, right? And they can go a long ways sometimes with a group of kids. And even though you might be saying something to them, if they hear the exact same message from somebody else, it might be an epiphany moment. They might hear it for the first time. In business, people will come to me and they'll ask me questions and I'll give them some answers. And they're like, wow, Jason, that was awesome. Thank you so much for that. I'm going to change everything based on that advice. I'm like, yeah, no problem. It was pretty basic stuff to me. And then I would talk to their mentor or somebody else on their team. And they're like, I've been saying that exact same thing for months. And they just weren't listening to me. And it's just often the case, especially with your kids. They just need to hear it from somebody else. So if I can help out in any way, let me know. Happy to.
Sounds good. Thanks. And then Scott, you're talking to the question that you had asked earlier of Jason when you're talking about the transition of, SEAL stuff to the sports world. When you were talking about it, not to totally digress, but the thing that popped into my mind when you were asking that question was this poor CFO guy from Bed Bath & Beyond, right? In terms of, obviously high pressure stuff there, but then also we all have choices to make, and there's consequences with those choices, whether we're making good ones or bad ones. But I just wanted to share that because when you were asking that question and you guys were filtering that out, my head just kept going to that, just in terms of to be under that kind of pressure, duress, that you have to make that kind of decision that just ends everything is crazy.
Yep, no doubt about it. We are going to finish up. One more question. Melinda, you are up with Jason Van Camp.
Hello.
You're a cleanup hitter.
Where's she at, Melinda? Some mute or
hello, Melinda.
Hey, everybody. Okay, I'm here, sort of. I
Together.
just somewhat landed from a long drive. So thanks for inviting me. My question, I think, has to do with maybe one of your next books, Jason. I love the idea of the, the discomfort. I've read a lot of Pema Chodron. I don't know if you've ever familiar with her, but her work. She's one of the only women of North America to be kind of accepted as a monk. And she talks a lot about discomfort and, that place of being really where it's at. So I really appreciate all of what you're talking about. My question has to do with how one forms a path. Like, do you set yourself with really large goal kind of looking ahead? Do you do small increments? I'm in a position right now where I'm transitioning from a long time career into something new, and I just get lost in sort of just a day-to-day, like what to do first. So I don't know if you want to speak to that or if that's relevant. That's my question.
Good question. The answer is it depends, to each his own, right? So for me, I get excited, I get inspired. I inspire myself by being ambitious, by setting big goals and saying, hey, listen, this is what I want to achieve, this big thing over here. Now, how am I going to do it? And so I get super excited about this big thing, and I don't get carried away with it at first. I say, you know what? This is the big goal. I'm excited about it. Let me marinate on it. I'm going to think about it for a while. I'm going to see if I'm still as excited about it tomorrow and next week and next month. And while I'm thinking about this, I'm not going to rush to failure. I'm going to start, as you're thinking about this, all of a sudden, like the universe opens up and you start to see little puzzle pieces in life. Somebody says something, and there's a comment here, there's something you see, there's a conversation that you have, somebody introduces you to somebody. Like all of a sudden things are just starting to happen. And that kind of gives you confidence that this is the right direction to go. And after a certain period of time, and again, it's to each his own, however long it is for you is however long it is, you say, all right, now that I have a little bit of information and I've passed the tests where I'm waiting to see if I'm still excited about it, still seems really good. Now let's tactically put that puzzle together. And that's when I start to put those small goals together and say, all right, let's backwards plan. Okay, in order to achieve this, the step before achieving that is this, and the step before that is this. And then I kind of go all the way back as though I'm building a ramp towards building the pyramids, unless the aliens built the pyramids. I'm not sure which, but sort of build that ramp. And then you start really small for me, like something really small, sending an email out, interviewing someone, trying to get a client, asking people their opinions. And then, as you go, you start to get more momentum. But as you build that up, you realize pretty quickly, if it's an ambitious goal, you can't do it alone. You have to have people. You have to surround yourself with the right people. And that's going to help you, to move forward when you want to quit.
Thank you.
Jason, what can we do? What's most important that we could do for you to help support you? Is it Warrior Rising? You name it, you got it.
I appreciate that question. Let's see. For Mission 60, I'd love for you guys to join me for the Deliberate Discomfort Challenge 2023. It starts January 2nd, 60 days. It's going to be awesome. Join the tribe. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's really hard. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, but it's worthwhile. And as you do it, and then you kind of stop doing it because it's only 60 days, you crave it. You're like, man, I just, like John, he still does it, right? You just want it in your life. It's like eating healthy. It's awesome. Buy my next book, maybe help me come up with the title for my next book, because I've got like a bunch of different options, so maybe we do like a little market research to figure out which title resonates most. That would be helpful. For Warrior Rising, we ask you to help veterans, give your time, your talent, or your treasure. We're looking for coaches, to help veterans on a basic level. There's a Warrior Rising live Zoom session every second and fourth Wednesdays for about an hour and a half. If you want to give your time to help veterans and answer questions, awesome. If you want to be a mentor,